5:30. I'd like to welcome people to the City Council chambers. Today is February 12, 2018, and the time is 5:30 p.m. Notice to the public, the Mayor and City Council welcome comment from the public during discussion. You're required to step to the microphone, state your name and address, and please limit the time used to present your remarks in order that others may be given an opportunity to speak. This is probably also a good time to put your cell phone on silent. And we are called to order. For those able, please stand me for the pledge. Stand with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll start with the Mayor, Council, and Administrator comments. As Mayor, I'd like to welcome the Miller Middle School team who worked on a project called the Future City. If you didn't get a chance to look it over as you came in, please look it over when you leave today. Michelle, would you like to address that?
Yeah. Michelle Sponheimer, Housing Community Development Director. I'd like to have, if you would, Cheyenne Mooney, the teacher at Miller Medical School. Miller, I gotta say that. That's good. I'm not used to saying that one. One of her students, Johnny Needs, and then their mentor for the project, Justin Strom from CGA. And so I'm going to let them talk a little bit about their project. But as a planner here in Marshalltown, and you're working on development projects all the time, I was real excited to see the work that the students are doing at our middle school, students learning about city planning. So.
First year that we've ever competed in this, received an email that talked about futurecity.org, said that it would talk about we looked into the zoning of Marshalltown, got onto your website and actually put it up on the screen, had the kids find out where they live, where the schools are located, how much space they take up. Then we had to work on scale. The students had to come up with an essay, 200, I don't remember how many words. 250 words to describe their city. Miller, because of our school budget, I told them they didn't get any money. And so we collected recyclables from all the teachers, friends, whoever would bring in things. The students tore apart VCRs, probably most of them first time ever in their life. They've torn apart any kind of electronics. And then they had to work, Justin came in and helped us work on scale, talked to us about zoning, talked to us about street size, and then the kids just took off with it, and it was a really good experience. Talking with Michelle, maybe it'd be interesting for us if we get to do this again next year, that we could come and actually talk to the people who are in charge of the zoning, Parks and Rec, maybe get some better ideas. The problem this year for the students was to think about senior citizens and how to make their life easier, so we actually even went down to the Embers and took a tour around that facility to try and give them some ideas of how seniors spend their time.
Very good.
This Johnny Needs.
We build all of our cities out of plastic materials, and we used, my group, we used old computer parts. If you would like to check it out later, you can see we used computer parts, and we made a mountain, and we had to learn a lot about zoning and where we should put the parts of our city and where our buildings should go and how to make these buildings fit into an actual city.
Very good.
It was kind of fun. The project kind of encompassed the city as a whole. They had to learn about a police department and think about how they're going to protect their citizens, the health and medical facilities, and what kind of things they were going to do to keep their citizens healthy so that they didn't get sick. They learned about, wastewater and water treatment, where it goes and what they need to consider for that, incorporating, where commercial, industrial, residential, schools, all that stuff, how it interplays with each other. It was really interesting seeing the kids learn it and then take that information that they just learned and kind of output it into what they saw as where a future could be in 100 years. So it was a lot of fun.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing. This is only my third meeting, and I'm already screwing up again. Forgot the roll call.
Gowdy,
Here.
Hoop,
Here.
Lamer,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
Weirin,
Here.
Cahill.
Here.
Are there any other council or administrator comments? Hearing none, we have a fun employee recognition event at this time. Chief, would you come forward, please?
Good evening. My name is Michael Tupper, and it's my honor and pleasure to serve you as your police chief. You get to hear me say that every once in a while, and I want you to know that I truly mean that. It's a true blessing for me. I'm going to try to, I don't know if I've ever mentioned to you, but did I tell you the story about how I became a police officer to avoid public speaking? I'm not doing really well with that, but so tonight you know it's important because I'm wearing my tie, which I despise, this clip-on tie, and I have a speech prepared, so please bear with me. Before I call the officers up, I had a brief statement I wanted to make. I just want you to know that I truly believe I have the best job in the world, best job in Marshalltown, because I work every day with heroes, and a lot of them are in this room tonight. These are people who serve our community with passion and compassion. You've heard me talk about that before. And I want to thank Marshalltown and this body for the wonderful opportunity that you've given me. Great things are happening in your police department on a daily basis, and you spend far too much time with me. If you haven't taken an opportunity to come visit our department, spend some time, whether it be during the day or night, please do so. We have great people working in the Marshalltown Police Department, and you really need to get to know them. Participate in a ride-along. Some of you have done that. It's a great opportunity to get to know your police officers and have a better understanding of the great challenges that they face every day. And they do so with a lot of nobility. And I admire them all for the work that they do. Tonight we're going to recognize 4 rock star employees. But I want you to remember that you have 43 sworn police officers, and I think we have 6 civilian employees now that are all rock stars, all doing a great job. And again, I'd like you to spend some time with them when you have time to do so. I'd like to call up to the podium Sergeant Melinda Roop, Officer Dawn Blahnik, Officer Brad Mosseth, and Officer Vern Jefferson. It's always awkward to know where to stand, so we'll do our best. I hate talking with my back to folks, but we'll do our best. I wanted to start with a quote from Arthur Ashe. True heroism is remarkably sober, very undramatic. It is not the urge to surpass all others at whatever cost, but the urge to serve others at whatever the cost. That's what these folks did. Police officers are often looked at from an unfair perspective. Our society expects that our law enforcement professionals be perfect under all circumstances. We are not allowed the benefit of doubt generally. Our every move is carefully scrutinized. This has always been the case, and perhaps rightfully so. Police officers have exceptional authority in our system of government, but it's also important to remember that police officers are just like everybody else in our community. They're human, they make mistakes, they have families, they're your friends, your neighbors. They're doing a job, trying to do it to the best of their ability. When we make mistakes, generally they're few and far between, by the way. We don't make many mistakes. We work very hard to avoid the mistakes, thank you. I appreciate that. But when we do, they're magnified by 1,000 times. But we need to remember that police officers generally, and most often, perform admirably and honorably on a daily basis, and our successes are not usually celebrated. I'm happy tonight to be able to celebrate and acknowledge an example of exceptional police service. This is a job that we all love intensely. It's more than a job. It's a calling. It's a calling to duty. It's a privilege that very few people in our community are willing or even able to take on. I'm proud of my profession, and I'm proud to be able to work with these 4 individuals and everybody else in the back of the room and everybody else that I come to work with every day. It's a wonderful group of men and women serving in our community, and they prove to me every day that there is nobility in this profession. The International Association of Chief of Police believes police officers take risks and secure the safety of fellow citizens. They endure such risk and tolerate such inconvenience on behalf of strangers. Consequently, police work is one of the most noble and selfless occupations in society. Making a difference in the quality of life is an opportunity that policing provides and few other professions can offer. The officers being recognized tonight will likely tell you, and in fact I know they will tell you, I don't need any recognition. I'm just doing my job. I only wanted to help. It was just another day. Came to work and I did what I was asked to do. However, I want you to know that what these folks did was extraordinary, and it's worthy of our thanks and praise. The actions taken by these dedicated professionals were heroic. Without any doubt, they saved a human life. These officers took quick and decisive action, not because they were doing a job, but because they loved their community. They loved their fellow man. They are passionate about service to others. They are compassionate about the struggles of others. These officers are willing to risk all to help another. Cops often say the most important thing is, I'm going to go home today. You hear that a lot. I'm going to go home today. Your police officers in Marshalltown, they take that mantra a step further. They are committed to making sure that everyone they meet goes home, period. It's not just about them. In fact, it's not about them at all. It's about the people that they're serving, and they want to make sure that everybody goes home safe. There's an old saying, if you save a life, you have changed the world. Most of the time, police officers do not realize or recognize the results of their good work. I go home most nights after 25 years wondering if I've accomplished anything. On a few special occasions, we as a community are able to tangibly see the good things our public safety professionals do. This is one of those special occasions, and I'm humbled to be able to tell their story. On September 19th, 2017, at approximately 4:42 p.m., these officers responded to an address in the 700 block of North 3rd Avenue after receiving a 911 hang-up call. Upon arrival, officers found that an adult male had severely injured himself. The male subject was bleeding profusely and was combative with all efforts to help him. Officers needed to act quickly, not just to bring the man under control, but also provide immediate first aid. Time was of the essence. If they don't do exactly the right thing at the right time, this man is going to die. Sergeant Roop, Officer Blahnik, Officer Mosseth, and Officer Jefferson, working as a team, as they always do, took quick and decisive action to bring this injured man under control and then apply pressure to his wounds. It is highly likely this man would bleed to death if the officers had not acted as quickly as they did to help. No doubt they saved his life. The action of these officers were honorable, heroic, and in keeping with the finest traditions of law enforcement. Your response to this incident was impressive. It serves as an example for all of us to follow. We thank you for your professionalism and devotion to not just doing your job, but doing it with honor and courage. With sincere admiration, we thank you for your service, and I'm presenting you tonight with the department's Life-Saving Award. Thank you very much.
This might be a good opportunity to remind people about the Pizza with a Cop night. I think that's set for February 24 at Zeno's. It's a good chance to meet your men and women in blue.
There's a Kids with a Cop tomorrow, right? At the library?
Yeah, I think we do have a reading event
and
tomorrow at
Cops.
the library with police officers. And then thank you for this shameless plug on the Pizza with Police. We have so many officers doing so many things on a daily basis in our community that it's become impossible for me to even keep track anymore. And we just are blessed in this department to have a lot of great leaders and a lot of quality people. So please take an opportunity to get to know them. So, and for everybody here that wants the Kodak moment, it'll be out in the hallway so we can get out of the way of the meeting, and we'll get out as orderly as possible.
Another shameless plug would be the Back Our Blue signs. I can't see mine now with the snow,
Yeah.
but I'm proud to have it.
Well, I'll come over and shovel it out for you. Thank you.
Let's move on to the consent agenda if there's a motion to approve it.
Move to approve.
Second, Your Honor.
Moved and seconded. Let's call the roll again. I keep thinking you can say all in favor, say aye.
Hoop,
Yes.
Lamer,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Gowdy.
Yes.
Carried. Would you read it now?
Approve regular council minutes for January 22nd and special meeting minutes for January 29th and February 5th. Approve bill list in the amount of $1,988,379.55. Approve November financial statements. Receipt of the building permit report for January. Resolution approving submission of tax abatement applications to the Marshall County Assessor. Resolution to certify unpaid bills for collection with taxes. Resolution approving agreement for removal, transportation, and disposal of city sludge with Nutraject Systems. Resolution approving a memorandum of agreement with the Iowa Department of Transportation for sharing of transit GPS data. Approve renewal liquor licenses for Quick Star 706 Hy-Vee Food and Drug Store, Fairway Stores, and Seven Rayos Liquor Store.
Thank you. Let's go on to motions item 7.1. Is there a motion to approve the new liquor license for Marshalltown Speedway?
So moved, Your Honor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Hoop,
Yes.
Lamer,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Gowdy.
Yes.
Thank you. That has carried. Item 7.2 is to approve the state tobacco permit, Shag T-shirts and More LLC. Is there a motion to do that?
So move, Your Honor.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Lamer,
No.
Martin,
Yes.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop.
Yes.
That has carried. On to reports. 8.1, drainage solutions for High Street. Justin?
Good evening, Justin Nickel, Public Works Director. As several of you may remember, during our public meetings for input on the police and fire station, we heard from more than a handful of citizens that drainage was an issue on High Street. Some stories about flooding, one time a flood that turned into an ice rink when it froze. As such, in the late summer, early fall, we sent out a request for proposals to consultants to help us with drainage solutions. We ultimately selected Bolton and Mink from Ames to help us with these solutions on West High Street. Tonight, Greg Broussard is here from the Ames office. Greg is a Marshalltown native, has shown a vested great interest in helping us solve this problem. And without any further delay, I'm going to turn it over to Greg to share his solutions with you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. You pull us up. I just have a short little presentation for you, and then we can work through any details. There we go. So kind of how Justin's talked about, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we got here, and Justin covered that. As part of the investigation and the public output for the police and fire station, one of the comments that came about was the flooding that was happening on High Street and the concern over if there was flooding, if there was that potential ice ring scenario that happened before, how emergency vehicles are going to access potentially out to 6th Street from West High Street. So that was kind of been our charge, is to evaluate High Street and figure out how flooding and emergency vehicles can potentially interact on that section. It's kind of first thing we started looking at was the drainage area and how big our drainage area. Our drainage area starts at High Street and it goes all the way south down to Meadow Lane. So Meadow Lane is just north of Fisher Elementary School. So we're taking water all the way from essentially right at Fisher going north to High Street and then in between Center and 6th as well. So we've got about 140 acres of 140 to 150 of drainage area that are coming to the High Street Basin, and it's all flowing through the High Street. So one thing that you can see, the blue on this map in a date shows where water sits when we get a rain event. This is for about a 10-year event, so it's 3.6-inch rainfall and what's going to happen. So the big thing that you'll see right here is the existing detention basin up in the top. That's going to have water in it, just the way it's functioned and designed to. But then we start seeing the water that backs up along High Street and how to fix that. So that was kind of a good thing for us to actually see this as we were modeling existing conditions. And I believe I have a zoomed in view for you. Sorry. Oh, there we go. So this is right on High Street. So we've got the levee on the right-hand side and then High Street running vertical up and down. So when you get a rainfall, we were seeing what the residents were saying when we ran our models. We are seeing water ponding there. So the one on the left, this is when we get a 10-year rainfall, which is about 3.6 inches. And then the one on the right is when we get a 100-year rainfall. That's 6.8 inches in Marshalltown. So you can kind of see the darker the blue, the bigger the water, the more water that's standing on that street. So what we were tasked with was figuring out how to address that and how to improve that water. And like I was talking about before, there's a lot of water that's coming to that. So what we did was we broke it up into 5 different sections, and they're kind of color-coded. We started with the green, which is the detention basin itself. And we started there going, are there any improvements we can make on the detention basin alone that would help improve it? And then we went to the red, which is High Street itself. What improvements can we do on High Street? And then we broke it up into a couple of other large sections. From High Street south to Ingledew. And then the orange is from Ingledew to Olive. And then the last last section in yellow is from Olive all the way down to Meadow Lane. There's a couple of intersections on Meadow Lane that have localized flooding right now, so we were making sure we addressed that as well through the study. So that's kind of how we broke our study up, and now I'll get into our recommendations based on our study. So the very first thing that we looked at was what are the recommendations to address the drainage improvements on High Street. So as you can see on this one, we've got 2 issues that are adding to this, that are affecting this. The first one is the size of the pipes. The size of the pipes throughout the drainage area are undersized, so that means they're getting full and water is flowing over land. So you can kind of see that on both these pictures. There's the grass area, be on the left. Water's flowing through that grass area because the storm sewer can't handle it. That matches, we talked with several residents in the area, and so we kind of like to make sure that what they say, the extent of where that water goes, it matches what we were able to see, which is fantastic, to make sure our models are working right, and then how do we fix it? So the first set of improvements we look at is on High Street alone. The first thing is doing a little bit of improvements to the levee. Where that existing basin outlets to the levee, our recommendation is to keep the same size of pipes but lower those elevations. That allows us to keep that lower elevation and carry it all the way through the drainage network and allows us to increase some pipe sizes. And on High Street, that goes into a new 10x4 box culvert that flows under High Street along with some other intake and storm sewer capacity improvements. So the basin improvements and the basin and the improvements on High Street, our estimated cost is about $565,000 to do all that. The reason it gets to be so expensive is dealing with the Corps to be able to work through their levee. There is quite a bit of cost to work through that and a lot of structural design to make sure that we aren't damaging that levee. So then you're asking, what are the improvements when we spend that money? So this is the first post improvement. So after we've done that money, you're still seeing some blue, but we're a lot less blue. The lighter blue is more of a surface water that is able to, we still have a passable lane down the middle during a 10-year, which is what we're looking for. A 10-year, we want the water to be primarily in the storm sewer system, and then the 100-year, we want to provide a path for it. So we've got still some flooding, and most of that flooding that you're seeing now is from the overland flow. So then we start looking at, if we want to go further, where do we go next? If there's the willingness to go further, we looked one more downstream, and it's looking at street improvements. So all the way from High Street to Ingledew. So you've got High Street on the top of your map, Ingledew down the bottom, increasing that storm sewer all the way from High Street to Ingledew, and what that would do, that cost significantly goes up because there's a lot of street that we're replacing with that. So that's 1.1 million. So we're looking at increasing storm sewer capacity, adding additional intakes, and then it'd be redoing the street along the route as well. So here's what happens to your 5 years or your 10-year storm. So we've got all of the localized flooding on High Street is, for all intents and purposes, it is gone. We've got the light blue here. That's going to be maybe an inch or two running in your gutter, which is what you would expect on a normal low point, because these are the low points. So water is going to sit there until it can get out. We still do have our 100-year flooding, which is anticipated. Goal is to get everything in the pipe for the 10-year storm. That kind of is the brief overview. So when we were looking at it, and then we also looked at upstream other improvements, but these are the major ones that we looked at. Our recommendation is to start with the improvements on High Street. It's this section. So doing the levee improvements and the improvements on High Street as well. And then what that does, that sets you up for, in the future, being able to do that bigger project all the way down to Ingledew, if it's so desired. This project would provide adequate passing lanes for emergency vehicles and a wide enough drive path during a 10-year storm for an emergency vehicle. I guess, what questions or what else can I help answer?
Can you go back to the other slide where it shows the path to Ingledew?
This one?
No, it's another.
That
There
one?
you go, that one.
Yes.
So
essentially, this is South Street right here.
okay,
And then we're going to take it through. There's an existing storm sewer that runs along the grass in between South and High Street. So it would be increasing that storm sewer all the way down to Ingledew. Because what that does, it allows the water to get in the storm sewer system and get it off of flowing overland flow.
can you just point out the major landmarks there? I'm just name some streets along
so
there.
this is
That's
South Street. This is 4th, and this is Ingledew. So right here on this intersection is Lenahan.
Okay.
And then part of this project, we also, eventually it's looking at how do you connect up at Meadow Lane and 4th, where there's no storm sewer right now and there's some localized flooding in those intersections. This would also help us get storm sewer all the way up to those intersections that don't have storm sewer in the ultimate goal. But this is where we'd recommend starting to start with. Yeah.
Okay, I understand that there's, the holding area for overflow and so on. And I understand also that there is access to Lynn Creek for disposal of that water. My question remains and is that access to Lynn Creek adequate?
Right now, yes, it's adequate. What we are recommending is that it's two 48-inch pipes that flow from the basin out into the Lynn Creek. What our recommendation is that we actually need to lower those pipes slightly. They were put in at a pretty steep angle, so we want to flatten them down And what that allows us to do is that we gain a lot of elevation, so that way as we go further south, we're able to put bigger pipes in because we've lowered the flow lines and not have to raise all the streets and have vertical conflicts.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so the drainage issues were highlighted before we decided that that was the site for the police and fire building. This is more of a Justin question, sorry. So do we have funding set aside for drainage improvements along there, High Street improvements? And what are they? I mean, what improvements were you anticipating making, and what kind of funding do we have?
We do have funding set aside. We identified, I don't remember what the specific dollar amount is off the top of my head. I want to say it's $250,000 to $300,000 for storm sewer improvements when we budgeted our $17.5 million for the police and fire station. You've heard me give updates, I don't remember how long ago now, maybe in the last 6 months or certainly within the last year, that we've run into complications in making improvements to our levees with permitting with the Army Corps of Engineers, much like Greg is talking about. So we do have bond funds that were issued in 2015 or 2016. I think it's 2016, and Brian probably could correct me if I'm incorrect. But we do have bond money for stormwater improvements that essentially is sitting there right now without money without a project to be spent on because we're mired down with permitting issues with the Corps. I would propose that we would use some of that bond money for the stormwater utility, from the stormwater utility, to make these improvements. We could either pay all of the first portion of the fee with our stormwater utility funds, thus freeing up some of our bond funds for the police and fire station for other unforeseen changes that we might have. We could spend the $250,000 or $300,000 that we have estimated for the police and fire, plus the stormwater utility funds that we have. We have adequate funds on hand to make the improvements. The $565,000 worth of improvements.
The, sorry.
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
No, go.
Okay. So we have to get the Corps involved when we're messing with the pipes that dump into the creek.
Whenever we touch the levee, that is, yes, as we've discussed before, that is administered by the Army Corps of Engineers, and we have to gain their blessing in whatever we do to make improvements through permitting.
Mr. Lammer?
One question on the flow lines that you're going to change going into Lynn Creek. If you change those flow lines, is there a time when Lynn Creek is going to be full enough that we can't dump, that the pond will not be able to dump? And if, when that happens, your model kind of screws up because that floods everything again. Are we going to put a pump system, let me finish, are we going to put a pump system in to make sure we can get the water over the levee if those pipes are full and can't naturally dump into Lynn Creek?
You're correct that there will be a time when Lynn Creek is at the water surface is at an elevation that it would close off those pipes from dumping. We have that situation right now. We have gates on the stream side of the levee. That was my first inclination when we heard the people talk at the meetings about High Street floods. I thought, there's not enough capacity in that pond, and that there aren't enough intakes on High Street to get the water off the street and into the pond. I'll let Greg answer the question in any further detail if I don't give a good enough brief answer, but yes, that was the first thing he studied is there enough volume, cubic feet, cubic yards in the pond to suffice when the Lynn Creek is up and we're not able to discharge from the pond out into the creek.
I guess to answer the first part of your question about flow lines, the flow lines that is on the stream side won't be changing. So as far as that condition will be the same as it is today. But what happens if the creek is up and that gate well and the flap valve are closed? What happens? So right now, what we've got are the models that we were showing. These are based off of the flap gates being open, but we have about 2 feet from the top of the water to the top of the roadway. And we have modeled it with those floodgates closed, and there is enough room in the basin. We will get some, it's called tailwater backup on some of the intake systems, just because of the fact that water isn't flowing faster, but we aren't going to see a significant increase in flooding. We still believe it can all get in the basin when those flap gates are closed.
Are you lowering the, oh, I'm sorry. Are you lowering the elevation in the bottom of the basin then? Since you're going to leave that, you said it's pretty steep.
I would like to,
If you're
but
gonna do that.
here's the other kicker part of this. Justin's smiling about this one. So we had to do because if you walk out there and you drive past it on a summer afternoon, I see a lot of cattails, and what that tells me is wetland. So we did a wetland investigation, and that is actually a wetland because the Army Corps they documented it as one, so we had to verify if it was or not. It is. So there is the possibility of lowering the bottom of that basin and going and cutting it all out. There's about roughly about an acre of wetland. That's $49,000 an acre last time I checked, just to be able to go in and not, before you move any dirt, you're gonna have to pay that amount to lower that. And so we ran some options looking at if that was cost effective or not. I don't think that's a good use of the city's funds to touch those wetlands. We were able to essentially take a channel from the levee outlet. It's going to run right along the south edge, or the east edge, sorry, and right to our outlet, and we're able to stay within the permitting threshold limits, so there should be no mitigation required for
Okay.
wetland. But we did look at that.
The reason I brought the question up is I know we own some more property on the east end down by the sewer plant that if we have to mitigate, we don't have to buy that property. We just have to go down there and make that into a wetland so we can clean this out. And did anybody look at that comparison?
A lot of recently, when working with maybe you can speak, maybe Justin has different information, but recently in a couple of projects in the area that we've done, the Corps has pushed pretty hard on us actually mitigating and not creating new ones because of the size of, they want a certain size of bank if we're going to recreate that, and I don't know how much room you have, if you'd have enough to make that size of bank.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Okay. Thanks, Greg, and welcome back.
Yes.
So, Your Honor, what's our next step?
Excellent question. If there are no objections, I'll work with Greg on preparing a scope and fee to design the improvements. And then we would hope, it's February right now, I'll make some promises that hopefully in the fall, that we could be ready to bid these improvements. Stormwater is a fickle thing. I don't know, it's possible that the summer goes by. Well, our police station won't be open anyway. It's possible that the following winter and following spring go by and that we don't have any flooding situation, but we'll try and get things mitigated so that there are either no or minimum situations in which an emergency response vehicle has to drive through a flooded high street area.
Okay. Thank you.
I suspect that's the consensus to go ahead and get that work done.
That's the two sections.
At this time, we'd only be proposing the first section, so we'd work on the detention pond, and we would make improvements to the pipe that carries water underneath High Street, the $565,000. We can certainly look at the budget situation and see whether it's appropriate to go. Is the $565,000 plus the 1.1 million or 1.1? I'm guessing our budget might be a little stretched. I'd be more than happy to investigate with Brian on what kind of funds we do have on hand, but we might be a little stretched to try and do phase 1 and phase 2 at this time.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Okay, thanks again. On to resolutions, 9.1.
Resolution authorizing the City of Marshalltown to submit a grant application to the State of Iowa Governor's Traffic Safety Bureau. Contract period October 1st through September 30, 2019.
Good evening again, Mike Tupper, Marshalltown Police Department. This is an annual grant that we submit for some traffic safety enforcement dollars that we use to purchase traffic safety equipment. and used to also have some overtime dollars available for traffic enforcement efforts. This year we're applying for $14,000 in grant funds. There is no match requirement. And you should have had some documents in your packet describing the application, what we're doing. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So move, Your Honor.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Lamer,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Carried. Thank you. Item 9.2. Madam Secretary, would you read that?
Yes. We have 6 resolutions authorizing change orders to the police and fire facility. The first one is for site demolition for Construct, an increase of $3,675.25. Resolution approving change order for concrete foundations for Caliber Concrete, an increase of $21,770.30. An increase of $2,304 for floor coverings for Allied Construction Services. We have an increase of $2,181.97 for steel for Central Western Fabricators. For general supplies for Garland Construction, an increase of $11,263 and a decrease of $4,964 for plumbing and mechanical for Tony's Plumbing and Heating.
I move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Time out.
Sorry.
Discussion, please. I think, Ethan's here. I'd like some explanation, overview of these change orders. Certainly it may not be the last of change orders, and there are a variety of reasons I understand for those change orders. I'm concerned about cost overruns or lack of planning or whatever the reasons may be with regard to this. Maybe you could speak to that in overview, please.
Ethan Dix, Story Construction. So, as the project goes through and we get it designed, the question about overruns that we have, we reviewed the drawings of Story Construction before they go out to bid, and you'll see that there were 4 addendums made to the bid documents. Those were attempts to make changes before the drawings went out to bid. So there is attempt to mitigate the costs beforehand and during as well. So that was that part of it. Through the budget on the second half, we try to catch everything beforehand. Not everything does, but we do have a contingency amount of money set aside for situations that could come up. And so we are within that budget to anticipate situations that happen during the construction.
As the age-old thing is said, 10,000 here, 20,000 there adds up into quite a few thousand. So, and I'm hopeful that you're really keeping an eye on this. I would like to report very periodically and succinctly on these planned or unplanned, what I call cost overruns and change orders. And I do understand that change orders arise from a variety of different sources, from requests from departments, for one, for omissions, for another, for lack of oversight, perhaps. So I appreciate the public understanding this, but I want to keep a watch on it as well. So, and I'm sure the council does. So, if anybody else has questions or comments, they're appropriate now.
Can I just clarify, did you say this still is within the contingency funds
Yes.
that you have? Okay,
Yes.
where we're at. What was the value of the contingency fund? Do you know that offhand?
So we have a 3% construction contingency
Okay.
that we have.
And this amount of it, do you have any idea of what? I don't know. I'm just wondering if we have a contingency fund, what does this amount to of that fund?
Oh, that's a perfectly reasonable question, Councilor
Thank you.
Cahill. Our contingency fund, as Diana's going to exemplify for you on one of the items that follows, at the moment, we have about 1.2 or 1.3 million that is unencumbered or unspent at this time. As Councilor Martin alluded to, we still have several things that we're trying to lock down. I think these 6 total up to something like $40,000. I guess I would say that we're doing well, considering we're 3 or 4 months into construction. These are all relatively small dollar items, except for the structural design revisions. Ethan's been present. We've had discussions with our designers, Prohaska, about who's going to actually carry the burden and carry the cost for some of these mistakes. It's my expectations that Prohaska is either going to reimburse us or going to take a lesser fee to make sure that we are not paying for something that we shouldn't be.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay, let's call the roll.
Cahill,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Lamer,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Thank you. That carried. On to item 9.3.
Resolution setting public hearing prior to adopting the budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2019, and certifying the tax levy. The hearing date would be March 5 at noon.
Diana Steiner, Finance Director. The council must approve the FY19 budget documents, but a public hearing is required. Changes can still be made at the hearing as long as the expenses are lower than what was published in the newspaper. Then the adopted budget must be certified to the county auditor by March 15th. Over the last 4 council meetings, we've provided you budget information regarding the FY19 and FY18 re-estimated budget. Per your request, we have kept the property tax levy rate the same amount as this year and last year, which is $15.28158 per $1,000 of taxable property valuations. The following expenditures were added to be paid out of local option sales tax council designated funds per the last meeting. The electronic devices for the council, including software license, totaled $14,392. We increased the cash reserve by $158,683. And then the general fund deficit of $14,840. That's a change from the $35,000 I indicated last time. Please note that the budget documents also include the Marshalltown Waterworks. Their revenues of $4.7 million and expenses of $4.3 are also included in our documents. They are included under the proprietary column. The Marshalltown Waterworks is not included for the calculation of our levy, so it's just a reporting document. So as indicated in prior meetings, the budget was developed on the following assumptions. Negotiated step increases and cost of living adjustments of 2.65% for all non-temporary employees. We're projecting a health insurance increase of 5%, but we will not implement this unless our claims history necessitates it. Construction on our police and fire building will be completed in FY19. The housing-led grant was not funded in FY19. and the backfill from the state continues to be funded. So those are the assumptions that we made when developing the budget. So if you will go to page 99 of your packet, we will go over the certification for levying of taxes. Can you find it here? So we'll kind of start at the top. So these are our valuations with and without utilities. So this $750 million number, that is an increase of $4.2 million over last year. And the utilities increased by $14.68 million, the utilities and the residences. So how this works is based on these valuations, we set levies on all these kinds of taxes. So the first one is the regular general levy. The maximum that any city can levy is $8.10. And so we put that number in there, and you can see the amount over there. The next one is
the significance of the blue. The difference on your page, the significance of the blue versus the black print, is it?
It's Department of Management's form, so it's computing it. So we're putting in numbers here, and it computes it across.
Okay, thank you.
The operation and maintenance public load and transit, which is our bus system, we put in $256,481. This is an increase of $76,000 over last year. And as I indicated to you at the last meeting, we wanted to increase the fund balance by $50,000 because they were down to nothing by the end of FY19. So we put an extra $50,000 in there so they, in case there was any repairs that need to be made, they'd have cash on hand to do that. The next one is the rental of the Civic Center. It's the Fisher Control. I'm sorry, not Fisher Control. The Fisher Center in Marshalltown. This is just a pass-through. So we levy $76,000 and we turn around and write the check back to Fisher. The next one down is our liability and property self-insurance costs. So whatever we're projecting to pay out, that's what we levy. The next one is the support of a local emergency management commission. Again, the commission just tells us what they're going to bill us for the year, and that's what we put in. The next one is the local band, which is the community band of $11,000. This is an increase of $3,000 from last year. It causes a third of a penny increase. And then our public library, $225,000. This is based on 27 cents levy, which the taxpayers voted for several years ago. And then our ag land, $14,000. This is also at the maximum rate, $3.00375. So as we develop our budgets, the valuations come in and we build this document. So it kind of tells us what our revenues are going to be for property taxes. So if you look through the budget comparison worksheets later, this blue amount is what comes in as property tax. And the difference between this column and that column comes in as a utility excise tax. So in case you're trying to find those numbers in our documents, that's why. And you know, you can have a lot of expenses increased for the next fiscal year, but it may not be covered by what we are able to collect because of these maximum dollar amounts. So there is an emergency levy. So if the $8.10 is not enough, then cities can levy up to 27 cents as an emergency. And we did take all full advantage of that. The next one is the police and fire retirement. Again, we just put in what we are projecting out as cost, and then other employee benefits. That includes IPERS, FICA tax, workers' comp, health insurance, etc. And then we have the debt service levy, and that has been reduced from money out of the local option sales tax to reduce our overall levy, so we stay at the $15.28. And then our capital projects. So, based on our valuations, we will receive $12.7 million in FY19. Are there any questions on this document? If not, will you please turn to page 100? I'm going to try and find it here. I need to get a little closer.
The page 100, actually, Diana, it was part of that property tax worksheet. There was a 12-page section there.
Line 2, I think.
From here?
From that same document, yes.
Mm-hmm. That's the budget amendment. That's all. You have to pull it up through the website. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so this is the fund balance worksheet. What this is telling you is at the beginning of the year what the fund balance is. So it starts with clear back for fiscal year 17 is the top column, the top section. It's split out between the different kinds of funds and gives you a grand total at the end. So here's FY17 here in this section. There's FY18 and then FY19. So if you look at the difference between the beginning fund balance in fiscal year 19 and what we're projecting at the end, that's an increase of $284,000. This comes because of you are increasing our cash reserve by $159,000, and we're expecting a $16,000 revenue increase for those funds for interest. And then we also are transferring $106,000 from Fund 300, which is that capital improvement levy, to our big equipment purchases for the fire truck. So that's why that difference is there. Are there any questions on this one? Okay, moving on. The Emergency Management Commission, again, this is what they are billing us for the year. We levy for it, and then we turn around and pay them.
Question.
Sure.
Does this include the 911 system?
The 29,000? No.
Okay. That's still included in our budget, right?
It is not in fiscal year 19. It is not included.
Then,
The E911,
yeah. Then
No.
where are they going to?
the commission will be paying
They're going to levy that
them.
themselves?
Yes,
Okay.
and that, the Emergency Management Commission held their public hearing last Tuesday, February 6th, and I believe it was approved.
Okay.
Okay, so page 102 of your packet. This is re-estimating FY 18. So that's this fiscal year. So departments went through and looked at what they had, what they've spent so far to date, projecting out through the end of June. So you have seen these numbers. They were on the budget comparison worksheets from prior council meetings. So all I did was take those numbers and put them on this sheet. And then they're broken out between the types of funds. So you have general fund, special revenue fund, a special, et cetera. So departments have an activity. So police, fire, flood control, et cetera, they're all within the public safety area. So anytime the budget is expected to exceed, actually, let me say that again. Anytime the actual expenses are expected to exceed by these activities altogether, then we have to do a budget amendment. Does that make sense? So it's not just the police department, it's everything put in this section. And I will go over that on the next, on the further down agenda item. So I'm going to go to the next page. And over here where it says water utility, that's where the Marshalltown Water Works is. They also have some expenses in the miscellaneous line as well. I know there's a lot of pages here, so bear with me. So later on the agenda item, I will be detailing in more depth about fiscal year 18, the budget amendment. But for right now, we're just going to go on to FY19. So again, all those documents that we provided to you earlier, the numbers are now put into the form. So you can see the taxes levied on property coming across this line. We get to fiscal year 19. Do you have any questions on these forms?
I think what we wanted to show you here is, I mean, I get that this is pretty boring, but everything that you have been working on over the last 4 meetings gets put in this form, and then this is what is submitted to the state, and then this is what is publicly then available from the state's website. So we wanted you to have an idea of what things look like for what can be downloaded by anybody, and to understand how that whole system works and what it looks like.
So if you don't have any questions on these forms, we'll move on. I should mention one other form that you have seen before, but wanted to bring it to your attention, is on page 109. This is the long-term debt schedule. So down at the bottom, you will see that we are using some of our fund balance in local option sales tax to reduce the levy. So the $2.4 million is 78% of our budgeted $3.1 million in revenue for local option sales tax in fiscal year 19. And then to bring our overall levy rate to the $15.28, we had to kick in another $633,000. Any questions on that? We've covered that in prior meetings as well.
Excuse me, can I ask that we go back to page 105? I did have a question. I'm sorry I missed my chance when you went by it.
Okay.
I think I'm looking at line 26 on 105, which talks about health regulation and inspection. And it looks, it was just a number that jumped out at me when in the actual for 2017 was $1,251,413, and then the re-estimated for 2018 was $701,000, and then the budget for 2019 was $2,070.
It's because we don't have our lead grant anymore.
Okay, that's the information that I needed. Thank you.
Good catch.
Sometimes they just don't look right. You have to ask.
Diane,
Yes.
refresh my memory. Where'd the extra 633,000 come from?
It came from the fund balance of the local option sales tax property relief.
Okay, thanks. I remember that now.
So this is actually the form that will go into the paper. Have FY19 budget, the re-estimated and
Page
actual.
110, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And it gives our levy rate up here. I can scroll up here. $15.28. And for agriculture, $3. So any questions on that? On page 111, this is Marshalltown Waterworks budget. So again, we've incorporated this into our numbers. And page 112 is also Marshalltown Waterworks. So their hearing is the week of February 19th. So in the event that they would change their numbers, then I will change our numbers as well, what we incorporated in for them, before the public hearing date. Well, actually, I'll change it before it goes to publication. So whatever's published in the paper will be what the public hearing will be about. Okay, on page 113 is our cash balances. So I provided some of the funds to you before, but now it's complete. And it also includes Marshalltown Waterworks on the bottom of page 114. So if you turn to page 114, so the total of the report at June 30th, 2017 is about $41 million. So in the paper, there was an editorial about our cash balances. So of that $41 million, $3.6 million is the Marshalltown Waterworks. All these other funds that make up that $37 million are designated specifically for a purpose. The only one that's not would be 001, our general fund, which is on page 113. Of course, we have the cash flow, which, with your permission, we could pull out and use for some other purpose. But I mean, we need it there for a cash flow. Does that make sense to you? $41 million is a lot of money, but it's for a specific project. And of that, the police department, or the police and fire station, in Fund 354, that alone is $3.5 million. On page 115, this is where all the numbers are coming from that you've been provided before. This report does not include Marshalltown Waterworks because they're not on our software. If you look on page 118, down towards the bottom, you're looking under account number 0016021 4010, that's property taxes. So that to the bottom of the page and a couple numbers on the following page all make up our property taxes revenue. Do you have any questions on any of these numbers? Okay.
If there are no other questions, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I move for approval. Setting the public hearing.
Right. A second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Lamer,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill.
Yes.
That is carried.
Can you do this, the last one? It's off the council agenda. I did want to go over the local option sales tax balances. That's on page 232. So up in the left-hand corner, $1.7 million is what we started out with in fiscal year 18 for the property tax relief. We had $563,000 in council designated and $2.9 million in capital projects. So again, because of the new levy, we changed allocations of how the local option sales tax is divided. So through October, the allocation was 75% for property tax relief, 20% for capital projects, and 5% for council designated. Once November 1st started, then the allocation was 78% for property tax relief, and the balance was, the 22% was the council designated. I kind of gave you similar reports in the past, but didn't give you all the detail for the expenses, so now I'm providing you that. In addition, I put in what we're expecting for interest income. And then we're also expecting a transfer to come back from Fund 741, the stormwater project. That was for a project on Ingledew. We didn't have bond funds at the beginning of the project, so we sent $75,000 out, and now we're just returning that. So now you can see kind of the activity that you've had throughout this fiscal year. At the beginning, we'll just focus right now on the council designated section. So last year at this time, when you adopted our budget, we put $170,000 into the general fund to make it balance. And then later in the year, because we did have a deficit in FY18, once the vote passed, we put $193,000 in for the deficit to the general fund. We requested and you funded a nuisance officer for hire for the remaining of this fiscal year. That was about $25,000. Then we transferred $61,000 to the general fund for 2 early hires of the police officers. You funded the 13th Street underground lines. We transferred $20,000 to the wayfinding signage match for the grant. We transferred $25,000 for a project on North 3rd Avenue. Then we did security cameras, housing study, Vision Marshalltown, the Vita Funeral Home demolition, the grant application for the NEA Art Master Plan for trails. So that's where your funds went for council designated in fiscal year 18. Now we're coming down to fiscal year 19. So we're rolling in with a $557,000 balance in council designated. Again, because of the revenues for local option sales tax, now the council designation is 22%, so $682,000 will come back in, and then we have $6,200 in interest. And where we budgeted this is that $158,000 went to cash flow, $14,000 went to cover the budget, and another $14,000 went to your council or your council electronic devices. So that leaves over $1 million left in council designated at the end of FY19. So over here under property tax relief for the expenses, fiscal year 18, we had $900,000 that was originally put in the budget for debt relief, and then $2.2 million was put in for the employee benefits to make us balance. And again, all 78% of the local option sales tax for debt relief is being spent, $2.4 million, and then $633,000 to buy down the property tax levy to keep the levy rate the same. And then over here we have the capital projects, the third column. So you can see what we're spending that in FY18, $23,000 on the rehab runway. We're transferring money in for street projects, $688,000 plus another $250,000. We have the Ingledew storm sewer for $70,000. Legal expenses for that, $137, and engineering fees, which will be reversed later. And then in FY19, we have $375,000 budgeted to spend. So that's an overview of the local option sales tax. Any questions on that?
I do have a question, Diane.
Okay.
And I'm sorry this happened before my time, so I'm just trying to bring myself up to speed on this. You said, and I know I saw it on here, the allocations in the year 17 allocated some of the local option sales tax money to capital projects, correct?
Yes.
And in our current reality, it is not allocated toward capital projects.
Right.
So what are we using to fund capital projects?
Well, we're spending down funds that we have.
Okay.
We have, and then we will, if we need some in the future, we will be bonding money.
Okay.
So do you need to know the percentages again? Okay.
No, I didn't. I just wanted to make sure that there was a plan out there for it, and we weren't just ignoring capital projects because I'm sure they were needed.
And the other thing I'd add is that with 22% being council designated, it still gives you the ability to designate that 22% towards any specific project that might come up or need some funding.
Okay. But I noticed we had seen the capital requests from the different departments, so I just, again, wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Are we ready for the FY18 budget amendment?
Can you go back just a sec?
Okay.
I just had a question about employee benefits. On page 99, which shows the adoption of budget certification.
Okay.
Okay, so under employee benefits, other employee benefits under FICA and IPERS,
Mhm.
it talks about, it's about 2.5 million.
Right.
And then under local option sales tax, we've got a transfer to the employee benefit fund, 2.25.
That's in a different fiscal year?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, the 2.5 is FY19, and the 2.2 was FY18.
Thank you. Okay. So can you explain the relationship between those two? Anyway, let's say they were the right numbers, like I picked
Okay.
the right numbers.
So if we didn't buy down the other employee benefits last year, that total would have been,
So we're buying them down with lost?
last year.
No, with lost local option sales tax. Because we're levying them, right?
Yes, so this is
There's
one
the
of
levy.
the one of the changes that we made was how we used our local option sales tax for property tax relief. It had previously been used to reduce those employee benefits levies, but as we went through the what gets submitted to the state, you don't get to see that. It's not very obvious that that's what we're doing. And so that's where for fiscal year 19, we switched that to debt service because we had to detail out on that long-term debt worksheet that that's exactly what we were using that more for and what those amounts were.
That's
and
when
so
you were
yeah.
saying more transparency with
Yep.
that route rather than paying. I remember that
Yep.
now. Thank you.
So in FY18, if we didn't buy that down, the other employee benefits would be about $2.5 million. So it's $59,000 less this in FY19 than it was in FY18.
Okay. Thank you.
And that,
That's
just a minute,
partially
I
due.
get my question
Okay.
right. So that's with the reduction of the number of employees where with the 911
Right.
and was a set amount, 100 and whatever, 154, 158,000. But then we increased that number again because the employees got raises and stuff for the next year. So the difference.
The raises don't go in that line. It's only the
No,
benefits.
yeah, and well, the benefits from those raises. As the raises go up, the
FICA
benefits
and
will go
IBRS
up.
goes up, right?
So the difference between those two numbers is the differences showing here, right?
We took the employees that were paid out of the general fund
Yep.
and looked at their benefits.
Yep.
So you have FICA, IPERS, health insurance, workers' comp, et cetera.
Yep.
It did not include E911.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay, if you go to page 280, you'll see the budget amendment. Sorry, can you change that?
281.
Got it.
Page 235. So this is the budget amendment for FY18. First column shows you what was certified last last March,
Wait a minute, 235?
235.
Gotcha. Okay.
Again, in March of 2017, the council adopted the FY18 budget. When we were putting together the FY19 budget, we provided the council with re-estimated figures for the FY18 budget. Some of the changes have occurred because of the police fire building debt and other capital projects. We are also including Marshalltown Waterworks. Other changes are for grant funding we received for specific projects. So now we need to authorize the expenditures. During the CIP, we also shifted projects. Some weren't completed in FY17 that we thought would be, so we have to add that expense to FY18. And in other cases, we're moving FY18 originally budgeted to FY19. None of this worksheet has any impact on the property tax levy. So the first column of numbers, again, is what was adopted. The second one is the difference, and the third one is what we want it to be. So rows 1 through 5, there are no changes. Row 6, other taxes. This contains a decrease for franchise tax, which we get from Mediacom, of about $9,000, and motel tax of $3,000. Row 7, licenses and permits. The net difference is $10,000. This is made up with $15,000 building license increase and a $15,000 in building license, a decrease of liquor license of $4,000, and other licenses of $1,000. Row 8, use of money and property. This row includes farm rental increase of $50,000, airport rentals of $23,000, SRT of $55,000, and the other interest income. Row 9, intergovernmental. This is our federal, state, or local funding. Increased our federal street grant by $793,000. The airport by $229,000. The bike path by $182,000. The road use tax by $100,000. Our wayfinding grant for $20,000. North 3rd Avenue grant for $50,000. Parks grant for $39,000. Department of Transportation grant for $41,000. And then we deferred the federal grant for the transit bus until FY19. So then we took out $216,000. We eliminated the lead grant, which was $727,000, and then other items were about $202,000. So that's what causes the difference in that line. Any questions on that one? Okay, row 10, charges for services. The Marshalltown Waterworks increased their line by $345,000. And that's the bulk of it. Row 11, special assessments. An increase for streets and sidewalk assessments. Sidewalks increased by $6,000. Streets we decreased by $27,000. Row 12, miscellaneous. Bike path, $508,000. We had some damage at the airport last summer, so the insurance company reimbursed us. So the airport had an increase of $54,000. We had donations of $159,000 and other items of $52,000. Row 13, other financing sources. Marshalltown Waterworks increased by $391,000, and we decreased storm sewer by $2.7 million. And then row 14 is transfers in, so that's going to match with row 27 transfers out. So we're transferring between funds. Now we'll go on to the expenses. Row 16, public safety, includes the payout to the E911 commission of $530,000. So at the end of this year, whatever cash balance we have, we'll be handing over to the commission. And then we had the early hires of policemen of $61,000. Row 17, Public Works, includes increases in stormwater projects, includes asphalt resurfacing of $23,000, and airport of $71,000, and then a decrease in streets of $281,000. Row 18, Health and Social Services, shows a decrease of the lead grant. Row 19, Culture and Recreation, includes futsal courts at $229,000 and the Softball Association, $27,000. Again, like for the Softball Association, we're increasing the revenues and we increase the expenses by the same amount. Row 20, Community and Economic Development. We increase the Section 8 Housing Assistance by $38,000. The 3rd Avenue Corridor by $75,000, and the Neighborhood Grant by $78,000. Row 21, the Carnegie Building tuck pointing caused an increase of $170,000. Security cameras of $15,000. Our accounting software that was not paid in FY17, so we brought that forth for $71,000, and then the council designated for $45,000. Row 22, debt service. We had to increase our payments for our 2017 A bonds. That interest payment is due in June. And at the time we built the budget, we didn't know how much that would be. And then we also have the fire truck loan of $28,000. Row 23, capital projects. The police fire station, we did decrease it by $470,000. We have streets of $1.6 million, airport of $115,000, parks $471,000, demolitions of $105,000, and stormwater decrease of $630,000. Row 25, the business type enterprises. Marshalltown Waterworks increased theirs by $677,000. Our sewer and stormwater projects decreased by $729,000. Again, our transit bus got deferred until fiscal year 19, so we took $414,000 out of that. And then the compost equipment was also deferred until fiscal year 19, which is $130,000. And then row 27 transfers in equal the row 20, equal row 14 transfers. Transfers out, and row 27 equals row 14 transfers in. And then you can see the explanation on the bottom, since this will be going to the paper. On page 236 is Marshalltown Waterworks information, which we incorporated. Any questions on the FY18 budget amendment? So again, we need to do a budget amendment if we think we're going to exceed our budget. We may come back in May. May is a very common month for cities to come back to their council and do another budget amendment if need be. But this is what we know today. So we'll need a motion to set the public hearing for March 5th at noon.
Your Honor, I would move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
And this is actually for Resolution 2018-016. Lamer moved and Gowdy seconded. Hoop.
Yes.
Lamer.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Weirin.
Yes.
Cahill.
Yes.
Gowdy.
Yes.
Carried. Thank you. Let's go to the next resolution, 2018-007. All right.
We are at Resolution 95, Resolution 2018-018, setting public hearing prior to approving the 5-year capital improvements program for the years 2018 through 2022.
I move for approval.
Any second?
Second.
Moved by Weirin, seconded by Hoop. Any further discussion? Let's call the roll on this one then too, please.
Hoop.
Yes.
Lamer.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Weirin.
Yes.
Cahill.
Yes.
Gowdy.
Yes.
Yes, so you've been provided the capital plan on several different occasions over the last 4 budget meetings. So no changes from your last version.
I was going to say, we'll go on to the next one. So.
All right. Madam Secretary, would you read the next resolution?
Resolution approving the 2018 strategic plan.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move for approval.
Second, Your Honor.
Moved by Warren, seconded by Martin. Any discussion? Let's call the roll on this one.
Lamer,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Goudy,
Yes.
Hoop.
Yes.
That is carried. On to ordinances now. Would you, Madam Secretary, read 10.1?
Yes, Your Honor. Ordinance amending Chapter 21 Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions, Section 54, prohibiting the use of consumer fireworks and display fireworks to add a civil penalty.
Chief?
Mike Tupper, Marshalltown Police Department. We talked about this at the last meeting. This ordinance would just make it much easier for us to, the changes we made to the ordinance would make it much easier for the police department to enforce. So we don't have to actually prove who lit the match that lit the fireworks. So this would actually hold the property owner, the person responsible for the property, accountable for any illegal activity taking place related to fireworks. Be happy to answer any questions.
Is there a motion to approve the ordinance first?
I move for approval.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that this is the first reading. Are there any questions of the chief?
Question here. Chief, are we talking, as it says in here, a violation of this ordinance shall be simple misdemeanor, punishable by a fine of not less than $250?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Is there a provision or is there consideration for increasing that for first offense and subsequent offenses?
I think the clarification to make here is that's not actually the section that's being added. That has been there. Our officers would not write somebody under our local code there as a simple misdemeanor because we would then have to provide an indigent defense. And so if they can prove who it was, they would write that offense simple misdemeanor under state code. It's actually Section 4, which creates then that civil violation for the person in possession of the property or owner of the property to be cited in the situations where Chief Tupper identified that you can't show who lit the match, who set off the firework.
I understand now.
Yep.
Thank you.
Further discussion or questions? Let's call the roll.
Martin,
Yes.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Goudy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Lamer.
Yes.
Carried. Thank you, Chief. Madam Secretary, would you, next item is a discussion item.
Yes. Criteria for use of city funds for outside organizations.
This was something that we talked about at our last budget meeting, and Councilmember Cahill made the motion, and it was ultimately seconded and approved to have further discussion about what sort of criteria and process should be considered for awarding city funds. And so I put together a brief memo, which is certainly not all-inclusive at this point. I think it just is a starting point for discussion. What I really tried to bring things back to is what you just approved tonight with the strategic plan. That ultimately is our sort of guiding document for what we're going to be doing or what we're trying to do with our actions in the community. And so that's where I would encourage you, as you discuss this further, to think about having a relationship back to our goals and objectives, that there's a direct tie back to things. And also looking at, there's recognition that we can't always do everything that we might like to do in the community, and there's other times when there's organizations that are created or they take on maybe a function where we can't always do that. And so the second thing which I'd encourage you to look at or focus on is where we do have funding limitations for providing a service ourselves. If there is an entity that is providing it, is that an entity that should be funded at some level by the city?
I also provided you with some questions there, and provided some detail related to what the Community Foundation evaluates requests on. Does there need to be an evaluation process, as well as, like I said, a whole list of questions. So at this point, I'm here to take your feedback and probably take anything that you would direct and put it into a draft of sorts and bring this back for continuing discussion to make sure that we've gotten everything.
Questions or comments?
I would comment that I appreciate the work that you did on this and bringing to us, and it certainly gives us a better starting ground than I felt we had before, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'd just make a short comment that I think this ought to just probably go away for a while and see how the year goes and see what where we're set when we're done. That's my take on it.
Public comment now? Okay.
Reed Riscadall, 1412 South Fifth Street. I go right back to the original intent, is that you're taxing people for this kind of number, and I don't care where it comes from, out of sales tax or wherever, and you're thinking in terms of handing this out to organizations. That makes you a foundation. You're not a foundation. You never were. You're to take care of the city issues and the city things that we're faced with, and you're faced with some really big ones. And it's very important that you continue to take care of the infrastructure of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, we are at item number 12, where it's time for public comment.
Oh, we got one more.
No, I'm sorry. Oh, I missed one. Update on the fire. What I've been calling the safety building.
Diana Steiner, Finance Director. This is just for information only. It's our police and fire building costs. So far, through our checks that are dated tomorrow, that you approved tonight, we have $3.6 million spent. We have encumbered over $13 million. We're projecting that the uncommitted amount is $1.2 million. Any questions?
The one thing I will point out that was clarifying a number that Justin mentioned earlier is that we had $247,000. That's a placeholder figure in there for stormwater improvements.
Questions or comments?
225.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have any contacts or glasses on right now, so I can't really. It's one of those numbers.
Any other questions or comments about it? Thank you. Now we are at the public comment part of the meeting tonight. Is there anyone who wishes to comment? Mr. Riscadall.
Reed Riscadall, 1412 South Fifth Street. Looking at your budgeting process, and certainly now, it certainly appears that we've never had an intent to ever not tax for what we no longer have to spend for, is the E911 costs. You have other items here that you created as assumptions for the budget. Obviously, step increases in cost of living for non-temporary employees, health insurance, construction. Lead grant wasn't funded. The backfill of the state continues to be funded. I can't believe, I find it just in your face that the E911 $582,000 was not backed out and made as an assumption into the budgeting process. It's reprehensible as a taxpayer, but also as just somebody that believes in fairness. This is not fair, it's not appropriate, it's completely inappropriate. I understand you have numbers, backing up the costs of all the things that we want to do. I fully understand that, and matter of fact, some of those things may be absolutely necessary. As a matter of fact, maybe they all are. However, if we don't look at the fact and simply notice the number, that understand that we started out with $582,000 less than what's there, how can we possibly budget the rest of it? You can't. You absolutely cannot. So if we continue to plunge forward in this process, we're doing it with an absolutely false process. You can't do that. We elect you folks to do the right thing. This is not right, and you know it. Every single one of you. Make it right.
Any other comment?
Gary Thompson, 601 East Main. Probably should have made these comments earlier when you were discussing it. Didn't realize I had a chance. Correct me if I'm wrong. The taxpayers were told that anything and everything that was associated with the police fire station would be paid from that 17+ million. I don't think you should consider the stormwater corrections on High Street to come out of anything but that budget, that 17 million. If you've budgeted 225 already and you see fit to do the $550,000 project, that additional 200 and some thousand dollars needs to come out of that. I think Diane said 100 or $1.2 million is the shortfall right now, which probably won't be there before the project's over. But I personally have a problem with us pulling money from other funds, citywide stormwater issues or bonding to fix a stormwater issue that had to have been known before that site was chosen. I don't see this any different than the communication tower that was realized that, hey, we built a fire station, a police station in a low-lying area, no forethought to, that we needed that tower. Therefore, we're going to pay for it out of that 17 million. I see the same thing as the High Street flood control and any street lights, any other, improvements that you guys have talked about. On another subject, the lost money, and I echo what Reed said, if we're using lost money to help pay budgeted items that should be paid from the tax levies, how can we even consider anything else, any other funding of organizations or anything? I mean, we have got to get to a point of fiscal responsibility that we've got to pay, the city has to operate on what's levied. The loss should be for all those extra things, that come up, like city improvement and things like that. And I guess I'm echoing what Reed said. We need you to do your jobs. I mean, you're spending our money, and we're maxed right now. You guys said we're at the top rate for the levy. I don't get it, but thank you.
Any other comments?
Jim Palmer, 3111 South 8th Street. I'm one of the current owners of American Aluminum Seating. I appreciate what Russ has done. He's brought some light to my eyes as once again I see our leaders, our so-called leaders, up here trying to do what's right, but you're not doing what's right. You've made a plan with the county for the 9/11 commission. You should be reducing the taxpayers and especially business owners, because we pay full value on our property. And you full well know this sitting here going through your process. I'm a little frustrated with it. I would like you to once again look at amending it and reducing the tax rate that the citizens deserve for Marshalltown. It's really double taxation when you look at it. We're going to be taxed for this twice now. One, you didn't take it out, and now the commission's going to come and tax us again. Please take into consideration and remove this. Mr. Martin, you brought it up twice. and I think you know. It's pretty clear. Thank you.
Other comments? Hearing none.
That one?
Harvey Varnum, 1302 South 6th Street. And what these past three gentlemen said, I just look around at you council members, you just sat there dumbfounded. I'd like to hear some comments from you tonight. Thank you.
Other comments?
This would be appropriate to maybe ask a question that I've written down here, and I'd like to have either Diana or Jessica explain how some of this we arrived at and some of the options that we have for doing this. I think probably these people out here are expecting an answer. Jessica and I talked over the weekend to, as some of you probably know, I was frustrated with some of the comments of liar and some of that, and I don't appreciate that. I've lived here many years. I was elected the third ward council person to do the best we can. We know that there is options to do this. So I would ask that that be brought up at this point.
I can answer that we have been working on a position statement that should be published on the website tomorrow that will explain the process and the amounts.
Okay. Just so that everybody reads that and who does know that we have some options that we've been working on to rectify the 911 and what we need to do or leave it, and what we propose to do with the property tax, which will equal out more than what you're being charged right now. So what that actually means is you have money over here, you have money over here. We have a choice. That what's this statement that's going to come out will tell you, will explain it to you. That's all I can tell you right now, because I'm assuming that they don't want me to pursue that. So it's in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just Mr. Gowdy. Jim Palmer once again, 3111 South 8th Street. It's not in their hands, it's in your hands. They work for you.
True.
So it's really not in their hands. It is in everybody that was voted.
True.
Okay, so it's in your hands. You can direct them to do what needs to be done.
If anyone else wishes to speak, would you raise your hand so I can see it? If not, we'll call the meeting adjourned at
Closed session to go into.
7:22 and then go into closed session.
Need a motion.
Oh, have to do that first?
Adjourn.
Okay. I'd
I
entertain a
move-
motion to go into closed session.
I move to go into closed session pursuant to Section 21.5, subsection 1, paragraph J of the Code of Iowa.
To discuss the purchase or sale of particular real estate only where premature disclosure could be reasonably expected to increase the price the governmental body would have to pay for that property or reduce the price the governmental body would receive for that property. The City of Marshalltown has an attorney-client relationship with their attorney Roger Shell, appointed as city attorney on May 5, 2014, and Lynch Dallas by council resolution approved May 8, 2017.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Cahill?
Yes.
Gowdy?
Yes.
Hoop?
Yes.
Flamer?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Weirin?
Yes.
Carried.